Welcome back to the program. So, just to let you know, the website is basically gone. Maybe another 1 or 2 more days right now. We are migrating everything over to Substack. And also, more importantly, if people land on joshbernsteinuncensored.com or jbushow.com, it will automatically redirect them to the sign-up page on Substack. So, check your emails in a couple days. Some of you may have gotten emails that you have been migrated over. I have given everybody 10 business days worth of time to let me know whether or not they want to come aboard. I have gotten very few emails, thankfully, which means the majority of you are on board. Most of you that are migrating over are going to be paying much less than you were. So that's a good thing for you. And of course, if you would want to pay more, there is a way to do that. You can email me and we can adjust the tier because there's only one to be able to do that. But let's talk more about what's going on right now. CNN, MSNBC are absolutely despicable. They do not support America. You know, it's something else when CNN literally has to go to the airways, Dana Bash did the other day, and say, oh, sorry, but CNN actually does care about America. No, you don't. You don't care about America. You certainly don't care about our open borders. You certainly don't care about whether or not our citizens are being murdered and raped by illegal aliens either. Because if you did care, then you would have had Miss Morin'S, the mother, the press conference, talking about her daughter Rachel and the despicable details of what happened to her daughter. Now, I was going back and forth as to whether or not I was going to do this, but I am going to do it because jbushow.com stands for Josh Bernstein Uncensored. And if you don't want to hear this part, well, there is a mute button, thankfully, on Substack. But I think it's important for you to be able to hear the details of what Patty Morin saw and went through in the last moments of her daughter's life. I'll be honest, it's tissue time. So if you want to mute it, that's fine. I understand. It's very disturbing details. But if you don't want to mute it and you want to get some tissues, now would be a good time because this is not dry eye moments, okay? It's just not. So let me get through these stupid ads first. Hang on. There's one more ad here. Here it is, right here.
You don't know the whole story about Rachel and about the crime that was committed against her. Even us, her family, we didn't know all the details. They kept most of it close to their chest, the detectives, because they didn't want to do anything to hurt the case. They wanted to keep the integrity of the case, so they kept everything close. I sat for the last 2 weeks in her trial, and we saw layer upon layer upon layer of evidence against the accused, an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. And the things that we thought, well, maybe this might have happened, we didn't know, but when we were at the trial, we got all the puzzle pieces. And I want to share some of those things with you. You know that Rachel's a 37-year-old mother. She has 5 children. We've walked the trail for the last 25 years that we've lived in Maryland. It's a safe place for our family. It's where we go to get a little bit of New England, because that's where we're from, New England. When she went on that trail that day, she was not planning on dying. She wasn't planning on walking to her death. She was planning on going to the grocery store with her girls afterwards. Victor Martinez, he waited for her. He waited for her to come closer. He saw her. He saw that there was nobody around. He attacked her. He dragged her 150 feet, blood gushing from her head. It left a 150-foot trail of her blood to the culverts, where he picked her up, he threw her against the wall of the tunnel, and he raped her. But before he did that, he stopped on that trail, and rocks, still stained with her blood, he used them to hammer her head against those rocks. They say at least 20 times they could count the cuts in her head. They said that when they did the autopsy, and I've seen the pictures, there's a 6-inch square in the back of her head where the skull is shattered the way that you would crush an eggshell in pieces. 3/4 of her brain hemorrhaged. Her right and left side of her face bashed in. Her beautiful face bashed in. Her head bashed in. Broken bones, fractures. He takes and he drags her some more. He drags her through the thorn bushes. She has all the scrapes and cuts on her body. There wasn't 1 inch of her body that didn't have some kind of injury, whether it's bruising, broken bones, contusions, the scratches. She had a fractured rib, fractured nose, fractured skull. And then he takes her into the tunnel and he picks her up. He throws her against the wall. Blood is gushing from her head. Her hair is soaked in blood. And they showed us pictures of her body against the wall, outlined. The blood outlined her body. And you could see where the blood ran down around her as he was raping her. And then he threw her down and raped her some more. And then he strangled her because he didn't want her to be able to live to tell the story. They said that when they did the autopsy on her neck, that one of the things they do is they open up the neck and they look to see how far the injury is. And they went all the way down as far as an injury is possible, hemorrhaging in the muscles because of how strong and violent the grip was around her. These are the kind of people that have no compulsion. Like, to them, this is nothing. And when he was sitting in the courtroom, he actually looked like he thought he was going to be set free. There was no remorse on his face at all. This person took my daughter so violently and so gruesomely and so graphically that they sealed the pictures, because I don't want my granddaughters to see these pictures. These are the kind of criminals President Trump wants to remove from our country. These are the kind of criminals that we need to remove from our country. We are American citizens. Why should we allow people like this, violent criminals that have no conscience at all, to murder our mothers, our sisters, our daughters? What? I don't understand why there's even any kind of problem with this. And it's not that it's political, like the left or the right, although I understand different parties have used it in the past. But we have to look at it as we are American citizens. We need to protect our families, our borders, our children. I don't care about politics. Well, I do, but I want to preserve life. And that's the only reason why I have taken and spoken about Rachel all this time. If you're a mother here in the room, can you imagine standing there alive? You're alive, and someone comes and puts their hands into your chest and rips out your heart? That's what it feels like. It feels like a part of you is being ripped out of you. You can't even describe the pain. Just like you can't describe to your husband what it feels like to carry a baby in your womb, or to feel those first kicks, or to know just intuitively if it's a boy or a girl. It's only a thing that a mother knows. Why are we not protecting the American citizens? It's just common sense. Why are we not protecting our children? And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this. Thank you.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be a tough one to listen to, but the only thing I can say is, number one, may she rest in peace. So sad how she suffered at the hands of this brutal animal. But these are the people that were let into our country. And as I've said before, the left doesn't care how many people die, as long as they can stay in power, as long as they can get these illegal aliens registered to vote, as long as they can get these illegal aliens the proper identification so that they can get benefits, so that they continue to stay here, living on the government's dole and voting for Democrats. That's what this whole thing is about. Collateral damage. The Democrats don't care if Americans die. Let me be as clear as I can to say that. The Democrats do not care if your sons or daughters or wives or sisters or husbands are brutally murdered. It's collateral damage to the ends, which would be to get as many people registered to vote so that the Democrats can stay in power. That is the truth. The party is a terrorist organization, as I called them back in 2018 or 19. I don't remember when it was. And these are the types of people that they are willing to allow to kill Americans so that they can keep them here and get them registered to vote. This is all about power. They don't care about you. They don't care about your safety. They don't care about your communities. They don't care about anything other than remaining in power. And thank God the American people voted in big enough numbers for President Trump, because President Trump is saving us from these monsters. And how dare Senator Van Hollen go and fly on taxpayer money, by the way, to El Salvador to try to get an MS-13 gang member released from their prisons and brought back to our country so that he can traffic in more children, so that he can beat up his wife some more and scratch her and beat her and make her bleed. The reason the left isn't taking this hardline approach on this Abrigo Garcia character is because, for the most part, he doesn't look that threatening. He has more of a baby face. If he had tattoos all over his face, perhaps maybe the left, that only cares about image and not character, would actually do and think differently. But it's the Luigi effect. That's what it is. Mangione doesn't look like your typical crazed killer. And so he's getting all kinds of crazy, unwarranted support from brain dead women that think somehow he's a hero for gunning down a 50-year-old man on the way to a meeting in New York? You sickos. This is why that party can never be put back in power. You cannot be trusted to protect the American people. You have a history of stealing the American people's money. You have a history of murdering babies on the day that they're born. You have a history of allowing people into this country that are murdering and raping our citizens. So no, you don't qualify for future positions in our elections if I had my way about it. These are the people that they want to keep in the country. Animals like this. They're worse than animals. I don't want to disparage an animal, because even an animal wouldn't act like these people. And they're not people. They're demons. That's what they are. They're demons. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. However, there are some good things that are happening, and they are in regards to freedom of speech. And what I want to bring to your attention is Marco Rubio, who I will admit at first, when they said he was going to be the Secretary of State, I said to my wife, why did he pick that rhino to run the State Department? But I must say, in a different position other than being in the Senate, he's allowed to be more of himself. He's articulate, he's smart, he's conservative, he's America first all the way, and quite frankly, he's doing everything he can for free speech. Here's what he did today.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being here with sharing for the American people a very momentous day in the history of the State Department and the U.S. government in restoring free speech and America's role as the beacon of free speech. Something very historic transpired today. Could you tell the American people what that was?
Well, we ended government-sponsored censorship in the United States through the State Department, and let me explain how we get there. This started out, 10 years ago with this effort of let's go after the messaging that Al-Qaeda and ISIS and others are putting to radicalize people. Who's going to be against that? That sounds...
I want to pause it there because that's important. He says, let's go back to how this started. And what does he talk about? He talks about the fact that when we had ISIS terrorists and Al-Qaeda terrorists and all that, they had a, quote, good intention to make sure that they were monitoring the movements and whereabouts of known terrorists, right? But they never stopped there because the left sees certain things as opportunities to consolidate power and control over the people. So it wasn't about terrorists anymore. It was, oh, wow, look at this shiny new tool that we have that we can go after our political adversaries. I wanted to point that out because that's important. So here, let me back it up.
Government-sponsored censorship in the United States through the State Department, and let me explain how we get there. This started out, 10 years ago with this effort of let's go after the messaging that Al-Qaeda and ISIS and others are putting to radicalize people. Who's going to be against that? That sounds normal. And then it was like in 2016, we had this foreign interference in our election. We need to start targeting some of that stuff. By 2020, it had grown into this movement of actually going after individual American voices. And one of the ways that was being done wasn't just directly, because the guy that was running this thing, Stengel, was actually a guy that was out there saying, Donald Trump talks just like a Russian spy. He talks just like a terrorist. Right. And so do the people around him. But they were also taking money from this program and using it to fund these NGOs, these third-party groups who were supposed to be impartial. Those groups were then tagging. They were literally tagging and labeling voices in American politics, Ben Shapiro, the Federalists, others, tagging them as foreign agents. So you look at it and say, American taxpayers, through the State Department, were paying groups to attack Americans and to try to silence the voice of Americans. And there were consequences. These weren't just a label they put on people. Some of these people got deplatformed, they got taken down, they couldn't communicate. So it was outrageous. So before President Trump took over, they disbanded this unit. They just renamed it and moved it somewhere else. But now, over the last few months, we've worked on it and just taken it down. And to the extent we're spending money now, we are going to spend money on messaging. It's going to be pro-American messaging, and it's going to be incentivizing and protecting free speech, which is threatened in all over the world, including countries that are allies of ours. The best way to counter disinformation, if that's what people are thinking is out there, the best way to counter disinformation is free speech, is to make sure that what's true has as equal or greater opportunity to communicate as what's not true. We've learned that the hard way. But when you turn disinformation into a weapon, a political weapon, a label that you can use to go after people you don't like and say, oh, anything that person's saying is disinformation. Well, listen, I read mainstream newspapers every day, or I watch mainstream broadcast every day that I know are disinformation. Okay, we have an issue right now. They keep calling it Maryland man deported to El Salvador. No, not Maryland man, El Salvador citizen deported to El Salvador. That's disinformation. Every day, a U.S. senator yesterday said that this guy was a kidnapped American citizen, and they published it in the article without any fact check. He's not an American citizen. So the important thing is that we have free speech so we can counter that, so we can say this is not true. That's the way you handle that. And, but we have instances now in Western countries where people are being arrested. You've seen this. I'm sure
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
People are out there, they put a post and the cop comes knocking on their door. You're going to go to jail for 60 days for posting something online. Right. This is crazy stuff that's happening around. The vice president addressed this in his speech at the Munich conference back in February. Yes. So we got a lot of work to do, but the most important thing is we're going to make sure that as we communicate to the world, it's going to be pro-American. Things that build up what this country's working on and explaining what we're doing, not attacking Americans who are exercising their First Amendment rights.
The classic work of the state.
Okay, all sounds great. What about prosecuting the people that did it? I don't want a slap on the wrist. I don't want the program to just end. I want to put these people in handcuffs. Let's start jailing these people for doing what they have done, which is violation of our free speech rights, our First Amendment right to freedom of speech. Censoring people, banning people like myself that had to spend $164,000 in 5 years on the security and everything else on a website and be able to speak in this country because I'm paying people in another country. How is that free speech? In order for me to speak freely these last 5 years, I had to pay for a security company in another country to speak here. That's a problem. And hopefully it is going to get fixed and it is going to get solved. So God bless Marco Rubio for taking that on. I'm going to end with this. More potential free speech for our brothers and sisters across the pond. One of the things that Marco Rubio said briefly was that Vice President J.D. Vance went to Munich and gave that speech. I actually played it on the website at the time. And he absolutely crushed them right to their faces and said, you don't believe in free speech. You're arresting people for not agreeing with the government. And he called them out directly to their faces. Well, J.D. Vance has now said no trade deal with the UK unless they rescind their anti-free speech laws. I love this. I don't know why President Trump didn't jump in front and do it, but thank God J.D. Vance is doing it. So basically what he said was, let's see here. I think there's a good chance that yes, we'll come to a great agreement that's in the best interest of both countries. But people and close to Mr. Vance say that he is obsessed by the fall of Western civilization, including, in his view, that free speech is being eroded in Britain and that he will demand that any labor government that wants a trade agreement with the United States must roll back laws against what he calls hateful comments, including abusing and targeting of different groups and minorities as any condition of any deal. The Independent was told, quote, "The Vice President has expressed optimism on a possible trade deal in a way of putting further pressure on the UK over their lack of free speech. If a deal does not get through, it will make Labour and Starmer look very bad." Needless to say, the Independent report not only misrepresents Vance's opinions as a, quote, obsession, but the paper also describes the censorship laws as just, quote, benign interventions against hate speech and targeted abuse. That's not true. That's not true. They're arresting pastors. They're arresting pro-life women that are praying. They are arresting anyone, for that matter, that is praying. They are arresting people for commenting on the Muslim rape gangs or any other things that are more controversial in the UK. They're knocking on people's doors and they are arresting them. So J.D. Vance is correct. The Independent are prostitute liars. Okay? So it says, no free speech, no deal. It's as simple as that. The source close to the Vice President has said, it is understood that Britain has already offered to drop its proposed digital services tax as a means of getting a trade deal through. But the United States, and in specific, J.D. Vance, wants to see the laws on hate speech repealed before any deal can be signed. So, God bless the patriots running the American government that actually do believe in freedom of speech. Perhaps, in order to get this trade deal done that they desperately need to get done, you folks on the other side of the pond, well, you won't be getting any more knocks at the door anymore. And you'll also get a trade deal, God willing. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.